Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to Salam Media's Hajj broadcast. My name is Faisal Patel. You can tune in to this particular broadcast on the YouTube channel, also on Twitter, and on this particular platform. Remember that if you missed any of the interviews, and we've had quite a few interviews, the first one with Yusuf Abramji, he's the guest of the king of the custodian of the two holy mosques. That's King Salman bin Abdul Aziz Al Saud, and also Crown Prince Mohammed bin Al Saud. So also we spoke to Anwar Esop. He's the one, and if you've seen the clip before the break and before our upcoming interview, it's where it shows that he reverted brother Ibrahim Richmond to Islam along with thousands of congregants in that particular hall. And if you read the story, if you look at Saudi Gazette's video of brother Ibrahim Richmond, he became a Muslim, and he also convinced 100, listen to this, 100,000 people of his congregants to become Muslims. It was called the Church of South Africa, and all those people in the church became Muslims. What a phenomenal story. And if you speak to him, we unfortunately didn't get, but I've seen the video where he's making a sort of sajda on the ground, and he's so overwhelmed by being in the Holy Lands. And the video was taken at Gher Hira. Now, Gher means cave, cave of Hira. We know this is where the first revelations were revealed to Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Surah Iqra, Iqra Bismi Rabbikal Khalaq. Remember that Jibreel alayhi salam revealed these beautiful verses, and this is the mountain of light. Gher Hira, the Mount of Nur, the Mount of Mercy, and this is where Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam revealed those verses. And then obviously we know the story. If you don't know it, it's just a beautiful story. And we are Muslims. You know, the first thing that I always say, and I even mentioned it to my kids, that we must make shukr first and foremost. No matter what we have, first and foremost, we must make shukr that we are Muslim. That Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala has given us the best present of becoming a Muslim. For me, that is enough and that is priceless. But we are on the eve of Hajj. It is the Yomul Arafah tomorrow, right? And a wonderful Yomul Thulatha, if you want to look at the Arabic date of it. But Yomul Arafah in Makkah, it will be Yomul Arbiya. But Yomul Arafah, the Hajj is Arafah. Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said so. And a lot of the king's guests have made their way on the plains of Arafah. Some will be leaving tomorrow, inshallah, just after Fajr. Some people will be walking. There's a lot of sawab in the walking Hajj. Some will be taking buses. This is also touted as the biggest Hajj in history. Now, I just want to share something, and I'll do that afterwards. But our guest is standing by, and I'll introduce him in a second or so. But a lot of people will be taking the buses, and I can tell you that if you're worried about Joburg traffic, it compares nothing to Makkah's traffic. And I just want to share something quickly before we go to our guest. When we left Arafah the 1 year, myself and my wife and a friends of us, and we were going to Muzdalifah, right? So once you leave Arafah, I mean, the amount of buses is just absolutely phenomenal. So somewhere along the line, I think it was 2, 3 hours later, when I got up from my sleep, I was looking for my wife, and she was nowhere to be found. And apparently, she had got off the bus because she needed to go make wudu or something along those lines. When she came back, I asked her, I said, how did you get on the bus and catch on the bus so quickly? She says, no, we only moved 100 meters. That was in about 2 hours. So, excuse me. So you can just imagine the amount of people that are there, the amount of buses. That's why some people actually opt to walk. But without further ado, let's go to our guest. I want to introduce him, his brother Aslam Khota. You would have heard him on the airwaves commentating on various cricket matches, the Proteas, a good friend of mine's, and also, um, I can't remember his name, Ahmad Umar. Of course, we know him as he used to play for, I think he played for the Proteas. He also played for the Gauteng Lions at one stage. But I do miss Aslam's commentary. Maybe that's why the Proteas are not doing as well as they should be, because Aslam's not on air. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, Faisal. I must say that when I was given this invitation and I asked what's it about, and they said it's a Hajj program, I said that we're more appropriate guests for this particular show. But then when they said Faisal's the host, I said, okay, I'm just going to say yes.
No, you know what? People make me too out to be too synonymous. I'm just an ordinary individual. All credit, everything goes to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But Aslam, absolute pleasure to have you on the program. I think we just got a bit of a problem. Um, are we okay?
I can hear you clearly.
All right. Yeah. So Aslam, we're speaking about Hajj. It is the eve of Hajj. You've been on Hajj in 2020. It's one of the most beautiful experiences. I know you've been on Umrah a while back, and you've been there since going for Hajj. And I'm not speaking about Umrah per se, but since going for Hajj, let's speak about the Haram. How has that changed from the time you've been on Hajj?
Well, Faisal, I was there in 2000. And just to fast forward, when I was back there in 2017, it was just unbelievable. Apart from the actual haram itself, but the surroundings. Just to give you an example, we lived in the Ajiyat district in 2000,
Yeah.
and it was about 2.5 to 3 kilometer walk from the haram itself. And it had the most unbelievable incline walking towards this place that we stayed at. It was what I would describe as a makeshift hotel called Imarat Hajar. It belonged to an Arab gentleman who married a lady from Cape Town. So our Muallim that time, Ridwan Timms, took us over. And that walk was just unbelievable. And it made us so fit that we actually did the walking Hajj. But just to
Mm,
get back to what I was about to say to you, is that when we were back in 2017, because of the memories that we took back with us, this time my children were in our company. And when we took a walk there to show them exactly where we stayed, and what a phenomenal place this was, because this was a district that was occupied by mostly Afghanis,
mm,
and all of it was broken down. There was no trace of where we stayed. Even the building, as I said, the makeshift hotel, it was almost like a dormitory that we
mm.
stayed in. Didn't exist. So just to give you an idea, I mean, things had changed dramatically, and of course, that big uh, clock tower that is there, that
Of
monstrosity,
course. Mm,
suddenly dominated. Every time you looked up, whenever you were inside of the haram, you saw this big clock tower. And when we were there in 2017, some of those extensions were still being built. So I remember my son and I climbing on dustbins and other parts of the
yeah.
walls just to have a look over there. And
Over
I
there.
must
Yeah.
say, it ran for miles almost, for a few hundred meters. And just to give us an idea of what the scale of this whole thing was. So I must say it was very, very different. I'm quite certain it's a lot different now.
One of the things, Aslam, that comes to mind, and I've been on Hajj last year. I've been
Hmm.
on a couple of Hajjes. I mean, with my wife in 2015. One of the things that I think that people need to get used to, and maybe you can, share your thoughts on that. Considering that, I mean, I would regard you as an athlete, even if you're behind the commentary box, obviously commentating on endurance sports like cricket and other other matches. Um, in those times, sa'i and making tawaf and walking between the different monastics of Hajj obviously takes a toll on you. Last year was quite difficult as well because the South African camp was like 1.2 kilometers away, going and coming
Hmm.
1.2, 1.2, unless obviously you got special services which is closer. Um,
Hmm.
did you experience any challenges or any endurance challenges when you were Hajj? I mean, remember that there's a trifecta here. One is you in ihram, which is quite difficult, especially for a man because you got two pieces of cloth. You get a lot of chafing because you got well, basically just two cloths on, and then the heat. I mean, anywhere between 45 and 50 degrees at times, and then obviously the aspect of actually walking to different areas. Did you experience any challenges during your time?
Well, Faisal, the thing is, in 2000, Makkah was very different. I mean, first of all, we didn't need to book through all these agencies. We went on our own. Ridwan Timms, Allah grant him Jannat
I mean,
al-Firdaus, just accommodated us and made sure that all of what we needed was in place. 23 years ago, I was so much younger, and
mm,
it was literally an adventure. And we just enjoyed the whole ambience of being there for Hajj. I was there for an Umrah before that, but
mm,
Hajj obviously is so different, and all of the challenges. And I must say that there's apprehension, there's anxiety, there's fear. And once we got to the 5 days and did the walk to Mina, and then of course we did the walking Hajj as I mentioned to you. And I told my wife that we're fit enough, having been in this part of the world for the last 4 weeks, I think it was. And
mm,
given the fact that we were walking up that towards that Ajad district and back, we
yes.
really felt we were up for it. And I must say that we found the walk an absolute breeze. And it's about 14 to 15 kilometers from where we were.
Mm,
And then just to tell you that in 2017, when we did get there, which is now what 17 years later, I actually found the Sa'i a lot more difficult in
mm,
2017 without it being Hajj.
mm,
So it is taxing. You need to be fit. It's always good to be nicely hydrated when you're in that part of the world, especially this particular Hajj being in right slap bang in the middle of the peninsular summer. I mean,
mm,
just a few days ago, it was the summer solstice, so the longest day. And I remember my brother Khalid in 1992 was there on the day of Arafat, was on the summer solstice day, and it was
mm.
50 degrees.
Yeah, I
So,
can imagine.
yeah.
Aslam, you mentioned the Sa'i, and I don't think sometimes those that are back home, that they haven't been on Hajj before, on Umrah before, understand the length of this. Hajar ran between these two mountains, Mount Safa and Marwa. And people don't realize that one way is 700 meters, other way is 700 meters, and you're running a total of almost 3.5, 4 kilometers. And remember, she probably had no shoes on, and she was running on rough terrain. We have marble and air cons, and we can stop
Mhm.
halfway and even drink, the Zamzam
Correct.
water. And I want to just share something
Yes.
quickly with the listeners. When I went for Umrah with my family a few years back as well, one of the things that the Haram doesn't allow is prems into the Haram. You either hire a wheelchair, but if you've got a child, you have to actually carry that child. And
Mhm.
I don't know where, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's mercy descends upon those people that come into his holy lands. And my little one was just about 2 years old, and he
Mhm.
refused to actually walk. He didn't want to walk. He didn't want to run. Even when we, tried to entice him, especially between the green lights on Sa'i, he just
Mhm.
didn't want to. This thing, and my wife, carried him up and down like from one end to the other, and I think that was just phenomenal. So even if
Mhm.
there's a lot of things that happen in Mecca and Medina, especially in Mecca, especially during Hajj, that stand out. For me, there were certain things that happened to us, myself and my wife, in Arafah and in Mecca that we will take back with us and will remember it for a long, long time. From your Hajj, brother Aslam, I mean,
Mhm.
you've been to Medina, you've been to Mecca, you've been on Umrah. If there's one thing, I mean, I'm not talking about, gazing on the Kaaba for the first time or touching the Kaaba or kissing Ajr Aswad, but if there's one unique thing that happened to you that you can take away from your Hajj experience, what would that be?
Gee whiz. I'm sure there'd be a few, because when you come back from that journey, that life-changing journey, the crossing of a life of your threshold in your life. Um, what I always found fascinating is that when I looked around the first time around in 1993 and then in 2000, and everything was just so modern. Everything worked like clockwork.
Mm,
As many people as there were, the highways were in place. Everything was working. And I said, there's just, and apart from going on the tours, what do they call it?
Ziyarat. Yeah.
When you go on ziyarats,
Mm,
you're actually told to imagine what the trench looked like during the preparation of
yeah.
the war in Medina, and so on
Mm,
and so forth. And then I turned my gaze to Mount Uhud. And I must say, Faisal, that a few family friends and family members and friends have left, and all of them pretty young at the moment. All of them are at Hajj, some cricket colleagues as well. And I
mm,
said to them that, you know, what you need to do is uh, taking the site of Mount Uhud, the
mm,
stars and the moon, because that is exactly what the time the our Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and his Anbiya all saw with their naked eyes. And if there's
mm,
anything that exists there that was the same all those years back, when you look up. So I
mm,
told them that do that and try and get that into your system, and then comprehend exactly what you are seeing, where you are, and just your surroundings. And I must say
mm,
that every one of them said, we never thought of it, and thanks for that little bit of information. So I
mm,
always carried that with me. But you know, like, was there anything that stood out? Was quite amazing. That we were close to, and just before I came on the show here with you, Faisal, family members alone, and I'm talking of uncles, aunties, cousins. We were about 17,
mm,
and there was one set of cousins that joined my wife and I, and my brother Khalid then came across to perform Hajj for our late father.
mm.
And the way the women walk those 14 kilos was beyond my comprehension. And it just
Absolutely.
shows you that the fervor, the anticipation, this lifelong dream, this wish that you are actually now there, and where they found this energy. And if my cousin Dawood and my brother Khalid was with me now, they would tell you that the ladies were always a good 300-400 meters in front of us, and they had to wait for us from time to time, stop and wait so that we could catch up with them in that walk on the walking Hajj.
Mm.
And that
Yes.
to me was quite phenomenal, because the energy and the zest that they showed towards it was beyond my comprehension. I've never seen my wife walk that much or that fit in her life.
One of the other things that obviously comes to mind, I mean, we're sitting on the eve of Arafah, the one is to focus. This is what it comes down to. I was speaking to two brothers earlier, brother Irfan and brother Anwar, and even speaking to Yusuf Abramji. If you come on a
See.
2 week package or 6 week package, or, I mean, even if you stay a month, it's basically a spiritual holiday. You're going to the haram, you're reading your salah,
Yes.
you're doing shopping, and no Hajj trip will be without shopping, because people sometimes expect certain things, when you bring back, but they've
No,
gone
no,
really
you want to
expensive.
bring gifts from there for
Yeah,
sure. Yeah.
but I must mention to you, and I want to share this with the listeners as well. The one year when I went for Hajj, I went with ITV that time, and on the same year of that Hajj, Hashim Amla and his wife was actually with us on Hajj. He was on
Hmm.
another group, and I had reached out to Hashim at that time, or to his group leader. And obviously, from a broadcasting perspective, it's a phenomenal interview to speak to somebody who was at the helm of his game at that time, to be
Hmm.
on Hajj. And I respected him for declining. People would be disappointed. I was naturally disappointed, but I respected his decision because he asked the leader to send me a message and say, no matter how much I want to do the interview, I want to focus on the reason that I am here.
Yes,
And I'm not
correct.
not only speaking to you, I'm not speaking to anybody, and we're trying to focus and get our vision straight to come here for the purpose that we are. When you are
Hmm.
on Hajj, taking on what Hashim has told me, how important was it for you to focus? I mean, you've been on that first Hajj. That your first Hajj is can never be repeated. You can go for how many Hajjs after. How important was it for you to focus and to ensure that your Hajj was as fulfilling as what you hoped it to be, and what did you do different to ensure that Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala accepted that Hajj?
I think mentally, when you know you're on your way, and unlike these days where you have to wait for your name to suddenly appear on the list, and you have to go helter skelter to prepare your trip, even though you may be financially ready, but there's a lot of things that you need to do. So what comes to mind as you were enunciating that, and also the question, um, I remember that I was in the thick of my first ever cricket season in 2000 as a
Mm,
commentator. So I was doing work for 702, and I was doing commentary for Supersport. And England were here on tour to South Africa at that time. You remember the famous tour when Hansi Cronje forfeited that innings, and it turned out to be a match fixing event.
yes.
Uh, Yeah, so it was that particular December, January, and February, and I was so busy in between all of our preparations that I must tell you, Faisal, that when we actually drove through to the travel agent Uncle Bricks
Mm.
in Lodium, my wife refused to believe that we're actually preparing and we're going for Hajj until we got into his office, and she was then convinced that yes, this guy is actually going to take some time off from the cricket. Fortunately, the international season had just ended. You won't believe me, it ended on the Sunday. Tuesday morning, we were on the plane. And
Sure,
when we
that's it.
got to Medina, my body caved in. I was
Mm.
sick for about 3 or 4 days. I had to actually go to the hospital there and I was treated. And I needed time to recover because we were still going to be there for another 3.5 to 4 weeks. And it does, as you know, is pretty taxing. And
Mm.
I must say, once I recovered, I was okay. So the preparation and the way things are now is so different from how we did it then. I mean, the trip itself, the 5 days itself, we left early in the morning. We walked to Mina. We had to walk from that Ajiyat building, which was now on the complete opposite side of the tunnels that lead you to Mina. So we probably walked an extra 2 kilometers that day, and actually through the Haram out the other gate and on our way.
Mm.
And then the next day, of course, as I said, the 14-kilometer walk. At that stage in Mina, what was very good was the camps were very, very close, literally 500 meters from the Jamarats.
Yes,
But
absolutely.
yeah,
Mm.
yeah. But the walk to the South African camp in Arafat was now
Mm.
on the opposite end, and to
Mm.
walk through those buses on such a hot morning with all of the fumes hitting you, but you're so focused, and then you see all these other groups of women and men, some of them double your age, almost on a hop and a trot, looking to get to Arafat in time.
Mm.
It's those little moments that stick to you, and you mention all of that every time you mention your stories. And then once we got there, Arafat was a revelation on its own. Just being there, and you find yourself so immersed in your reading. And I must say, what was really memorable, and this is what I should have perhaps answered earlier on, when you asked one of the questions earlier on, Faisal, was that because we were with Ridwan Tims, we ended up
Mm.
with a group from Cape Town, and I must say it was unbelievable. I mean, the way they went about their Hajj, and the women, and how they all congregated, got together, became a team on their own. When we were actually offered to join another group, my wife refused. She says, "You know
Mm.
what? We've been with these people from the time in that building in Mecca. We're not going to leave them." And I must say that was possibly one of the more memorable aspects of our trip, where we spent it with these people. And um, they show you what it really means to be in those holy places and on the holy plains of Arafat. And being in that camp, the type of du'as and the everything else that happens on that on that particular day, between say 11 o'clock to 4 o'clock, 4:30, when eventually you got to get ready to now go to Muzdalifah. That period we spent was perhaps the most memorable of the 5 days itself. And then coming back, I mean, to Muzdalifah, the crowds. We were so fortunate that because our tent was now on the other side of Mina, which is at the entrance, our walk was much longer. But
Mm.
then we rested, and then we went for the Jamarats. And there too, the anxiety. And we had a cousin of mine, Munir Saleh, who had been on two previous Hajjs, and he just said, "I'll tell you exactly the time when we're going to leave the camp so that we'll feel safe." And I must say, when we got up there, it was almost as if, there was maybe two busloads of people. So we were so blessed, and you can't stop making shukr. And
Mm.
then what was also very memorable for us is because we weren't staying in, uh, what's this little place outside of Mina where everybody's staying in now? They have to book in before.
Azizia.
Azizia, yes.
Yeah.
So we had to go back again, as I said, to the other end and up the hill to Ajiyat, because we actually booked our sheep or our goats
Mm.
opposite from where we were staying. And we got there, and then we did the normal sacrificing of the lambs. And then we went down to have our hair cut. We came back and had our showers. and then we went back and did the tawaf, and then walked almost all the way back to Mina. And a similar experience like yours. We saw buses, we identified them, got on them. We were so tired, we fell asleep. I think this was about 11 o'clock at night. And when we woke up, it was about 2, and the bus
Yes.
hadn't moved. So we got off and walked again back to back to the camp. So those were just the most unbelievable times. I don't think I've been fitter than I was at that time, Faisal, ever.
And finally, Aslam, I mean, very
Yeah.
briefly, we've got South African Hujjaj, 3,500 of them. Some were the guests of the king, so you're looking at about just over 3,500.
Mhm.
Assuming, I mean, hypothetically speaking, if they could hear you now, if you could give them one message, what message would that be?
The thing is, by the time you get to the 5 days,
Mm,
the being in Makkah Sharif itself and wanting to be part of all the 5 salahs that are happening there, depending on where you stay, the distance, the exhaustion is quite palpable. Now, the thing is, they're already going to start tomorrow. The one
mm,
thing I would have told them is that 2 to 3 days before and in any case, you can't even get into the Haram 2 to 3 days before Hajj, because suddenly the throngs just come in there
of
and
course.
there's no space. So try and relax, try and just hydrate, eat well, because when you get to the actual trip and the journey, whether you by bus or whether you're using the bus service or you're going walking, that you need to uh, maintain all of your stamina, your strength, because you're going to use it up in those 5 days. And whilst it sounds difficult, because at the end of the day, I mean, I sometimes describe it to the young guys and some of the people who've been full of anxiety, like we're going for
Mm,
Hajj, and there's that sense of fear. I tell
mm,
them it's a 5 day camp, and you just imagine you're on a campsite, and
mm,
that's all it's about. And you're going to follow everybody, and you're going to learn so much, and you'll come back with the greatest of memories. And each of the million people, I mean, they come back with memories of their own. I was also
mm.
doing some arithmetic before I got on air with you, and
Yes.
not even going back 1440 years, but even if you take just the last century and a half, and if we average it out to say close to a million people having gone there for the last 120 years, that's 120 million people.
Yeah,
Now, if
it's
you
a
go
lot.
back another 1,000 years, another
Mm,
1,300 years, try and imagine how many people have been there.
mm,
So I always say that just imagine that this invitation with 2 point somewhat billion Muslims, you are so fortunate because Allah pinpointed you to say, come
yeah.
and join me and come to the Holy Lands. So make absolutely sure that every waking moment is fulfilling, and you come back with that total satisfaction.
Brother Aslam, Jazakallah so much for your time. I really appreciate it. And I think on behalf of myself and Salam Media, we want to just say, thank you for sharing, the wonderful moments. I was speaking to the Hujaj earlier, and you just want to be there where they are at the moment.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
no doubt, thousands and thousands of South Africans also want to be there. And one of the du'as we've been sharing with all those Hujaj in the kingdom is to say that, when they're on the plains of Arafat tomorrow, when the time of wukuf sets in, to make insurmountable and infinite amounts of
Hmm.
dua, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make the reality of Hajj for all those people who have the desires in their hearts. Islam, Jazakallah so much for your time. May
Ameen
Allah
ya
subhanahu wa ta'ala
Rabbal
keep you
Alameen.
safe, and inshallah, we will speak again.
Jazakallah khair for having me. And I'm amazed that we actually got through a number of these, 10, 15 minutes where I had
Uh,
something to say. Thanks so much.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Okay, so that was us brother Aslam Khota. He's a former cricket commentator, a wonderful friend, and I know him well as well. Sharing his Hajj experiences in 2020, I think 2020, that's when he went for Hajj. But there's a lot of people, our grandfathers, for those that are still alive, may Allah grant those that have passed away, the highest stages of Jannah. For a lot of people that went many years ago, like in the 1960s, in the 1970s, Mecca and Medina was a different place altogether. A simple thing like the Jamarats in during that time was just 3 pillars. So inshallah, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make it easy for us to actually go there one day. Let's go to our next guest, and this is an absolute pleasure. And I want to welcome the religious attaché for Saudi Arabia in South Africa. That's Brother Muhammad Ashur, a wonderful friend of mine and a wonderful person who will share some insight, inshallah, with regards to the guests of the king and the wonderful work that Saudi Arabia is doing to ensure the comfort and the ease of Hajj for the millions of people and Muslims that are in Hajj. Let's welcome Brother Muhammad to the program. Muhammad, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Okay, we're going to go for a quick break, and then after the break, inshallah, we will touch base with Brother Muhammad.